Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name is James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show athletic trainer and volunteer firefighter, Dr. Marc Wysocki. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from keeping our youth athletes safe, injury prevention, chasing a scholarship, his journey into EMS, the volunteer fire service, mental health, organizational betrayal, healing tools, the E. Darley essay he wrote, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Dr. Marc Wysocki. Enjoy. Well, Marc, I want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Behind the Shield podcast. But before we jump in, I also want to say thank you to Kevin Sofin, because through the E. Darley essay competition, that is how we came together. So thank you to Kevin, and I want to welcome you onto the show.
Thank you. And yes, definitely. Thank you, Kevin.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
I'm in Sheffield, Massachusetts. For people who don't know, obviously our state is a long rectangle and Boston is the opposite end. I'm in the southwest corner of Massachusetts, right near the New York-Connecticut border.
So as we record this, Florida is cold, but I'm not going to insult the rest of the country as to how cold, because it's still beautiful. I just went and bought my dog in a pair of jeans, but it's cold for us. What are you experiencing up there?
We got 1.5 feet, all powder, which is good. I'll take that over any ice mix. And I think when I walked out, it got up to 20. So earlier today was single digits.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we're supposed to be in the 20s in about 3 or 4 days at night. So that's pretty damn chilly for Florida. So all our plants will be dead.
Yeah, my parents live in Florida as well. So I understand where you're coming from.
Jumping ahead, but just before we hit record, you mentioned about working at the Disney, was it the marathon you said?
Yes. Yeah. One of my friends is one of the medical coordinators. So she invited me and my wife down to help be volunteers.
Okay. I'd be curious of your perspective of that. When I worked for the fire department that protected Disney, one of the most bizarre things I witnessed is we were in one of the vans that was a medical van, but we kind of held up the rear. And we watched this couple start the race. I don't know if they even ran half a mile, took a selfie with their medals, and then got in the van that was the kind of, the van that took the stragglers back. It wasn't our van. And so I realized that there are some people out there that said they ran the Disney Marathon. They did run it. They just didn't finish it. So, were there any bizarre things that you've witnessed in that particular area?
Well, obviously, when you said the back, I learned about the famous balloon ladies, the ones who set the pace. And if you don't make the pace, you got to get in the bus. And
yep.
As far as bizarre, I would just say the 5K outfits, really. We were lucky this time around. It was really good weather. Unfortunately, it was hot during the marathon. I mean, even for, not hot for me, but I know hot for running conditions and how long they have to go. But people were in uniform, costumes with the higher races, but they were more running, they could build it into their running outfit. So it wasn't like a full costume like the 5K was. So that's about the most bizarre stuff I saw. No, I didn't see any like wannabes like that. I was always at the finish line or the family reunion area when they were really done.
Yeah, kudos to Reedy Creek and some of the medics though, because they've had so many cardiac arrest saves on those marathons. Because as you can imagine, with that many people and the heat and everything else, we do have medical emergencies once in a while. So they've saved a lot of lives on that race.
Yeah, I only saw. Well, I meant the running around that I did in the spaces. I only saw, I think, 2 ambulance trips right from our medical tent, which is great considering the number of people.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get to the beginning of your timeline then. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
Sure. So I was born back in the 1900s.
Me too.
That's a joke for the newer people listen. Okay. So I was born in Meriden, Connecticut, which is like halfway between Hartford and New Haven. My dad worked for Pratt and Whitney, makes jet engines, for 42 years. And my mom was a phys ed teacher for 25, 30 years from middle school. So she needs a medal alone just for doing that for middle school kids. I have one sibling, brother who's 6 years older than me, naval aviator for 32 years. He's retired now. So that's my family dynamic. The start of my origin story, I'm a superhero fan, so I'm going to use origin story. Sophomore year, I joined the football team in high school. My freshman year, I played freshman football. Sophomore year, I got through 2 weeks of double sessions. This is the 80s, so the hours and all that. We just went twice a day for 2 weeks. Basically, had Sunday off. Basically, a tackling dummy for the varsity kids. But I made it. I made it all the way through. Obviously banged up, hurt, but I made it through all the practices. First practice after school, first tackling drill, tore my ACL.
Oh my goodness!
I collided with another sophomore. I didn't feel anything. I just heard the pops in my ear from the pads, not my knee. And I remember sitting halfway on my butt, and coach said, "Hey, you just need to do get lower, get underneath, right, get back up in line." I'm like, "Okay." I got up, and then that was it. Like my knee blew up like a coconut. I had to be helped off, and then from there, getting ACL surgery in '86 is way different than 2026. So when you got it back then, that was it. I mean, think about, returning. But I got interested in how the PTs and the athletic trainers at my local clinic, what they were doing and how they helped me, so that they let me shadow afterwards. I was discharged. And fortunately for me, my football coach is also my guidance counselor in high school. And he got me into a student athletic trainer workshop at Northeastern University my junior summer. And that lit the fire ever since. So that was great. And then I went on, got my bachelor's degree at Colby Sawyer College in New Hampshire, and then got my master's right afterwards, Springfield College. And then I went off and I taught at Plymouth State University. And then I went to Rhode Island, where I worked in a clinic in the morning and a high school in the afternoon for a couple of years. And then I actually went out Midwest to Topeka, Kansas for ice hockey. So I was a minor league ice hockey athletic trainer, all bus traveling, anywhere from 9 hours to 26 hours on a bus, traveling across the Midwest and the South. Yeah. One of the most brutal ones was we had a home and home with Indianapolis on New Year's Eve day. So they played in our barn, and then it's New Year's Eve. So basically everyone just got back on the bus later on after having a few for celebrating New Year's, and then went and played their barn, and then came back 9 hours after that. So that was typical. And then, so after that, I moved back east to Long Island to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, where I was an athletic trainer instructor there. And I got engaged as well, and then moved to Berkshire School, where I am now in Sheffield, Mass, which is a private boarding school, co-ed 9 through 12. And it's about 420 students, and I'm in my 25th year. I was also assistant AD for 15 years, and now moved over to the campus safety side as well. So I'm associate director of campus safety and still the head athletic trainer.
Going all the way back to your mother, because I've got some numerous questions I want to talk about youth athletes and your unique perspective that you have. But with your mother, what has been the conversation you've had with her as far as the evolution or devolution of physical education in schools?
I think it's more on the de-evolution. I think part of it is just less emphasis on just physical education and interaction. Overall, budget obviously always plays a role from place to place. I think, fortunately, what happened in my mom's situation was one of her fellow teachers and good friends worked his way up to become principal. So she, not just friend, but he saw the importance of physical education. Plus, you had middle school kids. You do not want middle school kids just sitting around all day either. You got to burn 1% of that energy somehow that they have. But I mean, fortunately, obviously, budgets happen everywhere. But I think overall culture, we see more de-evolution and not seeing what came with evolution. It's not just going out and playing. It's the motor skills, it's the teamwork, the communication parts that, people from the outside don't really see sometimes.
I had a guy on the show. We became friends now, but his name's Doug Orchard, and he made a documentary called The Motivation Factor, and it detailed La Sierra High School in the 60s. And they had created, I think it was based on a Russian system, kind of almost like a belt system for PE. So it was different colored gym shorts, and the kids would work in groups, and you'd start, whatever. I'm sure you probably tested into a group. But then as you work through, your physical fitness and your strength training, you could then test up. And it was such an incredible philosophy because the top tier, I think it was the gold shorts, so I forget the color, any of those, young men in this case could have been on the front of Muscle and Fitness. I mean, they were in incredible shape. And so you take wrestling, football, basketball, if they wanted to play that sport, the conditioning side was already done. Now you just have to learn the skills for the sport. But I think where it's even more important is, the clarinet player, the chess player was also in great shape. So the whole school, no matter what their passion was, worked as a team. And so it wasn't just their physical fitness, it was their grades. There was like almost zero bullying going on. So as you alluded to, that not just the actual health of the individual, but it was the holistic child and their education all saw this uptick. And it was dismantled in the 60s or 70s, I forget. And there was a school in California that tried to revive it recently, and then when COVID hit, it got dismantled, and that was it. But it's so heartbreaking because we have this example of why PE programs are so important, and that shared suffering, and all these elements. And there's so much opposition now, and as you mentioned, funding. Well, that's so short-sighted because if you proactively invest in the health of our children, I mean, the savings for that child's entire life are innumerable.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more on that. But I think just personally in this day and age, like if we ever went to that colored system, well, we'd get, everyone needs a trophy. How come they're not in this color? Just like the way it is with, outside club sports and what the parents are paying for. And that's a whole nother discussion, but you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, while we're on that then, this is a good place to have this conversation then. So yeah. Firstly, I've told this story a lot, but it needs to be told to explain, where I'm coming from. When I first moved to America, after a few years, I kept seeing the same kind of individual, which would be a kind of deconditioned American male, like late 20s, early 30s. And, they always had their Uncle Rico story. Well, I coulda, woulda, shoulda if it wasn't for my ACL, my, labrum, whatever it was that ended their soon-to-be professional career. And after a while, it went to kind of, well, what are we doing to our children in high school and college? Because it wasn't like I got hurt, but now I still play, a local league. It was like I got hurt and now I play nothing at all. And now they're very deconditioned. Comparatively, in Europe, at least when I was young, you didn't have a high level of performance unless you were just, groomed to be an elite football player, for example. The rest of us just played. So when you graduated school, you kept playing sports, pub leagues and local leagues and whatever it was. So I felt like there was a continuance of the love of movement and sport, and fitness was kind of just ingrained in everyday life. With the coaches and the high level athletes that I've had on here, I always kind of put the question to them. I feel like in a lot of these areas, the performance and the competitions, the first places, in some cases become more important than the longevity and well-being of their student athletes. And I think that's a dangerous place if that's, not addressed. What have you seen over your career as far as that, the performance versus the wellness and longevity of each individual player?
Oh, yeah. You hit bullseye on that one. I think it's more just about making their own highlight reel to promote their brand, so they can get that scholarship or that spot on that travel team. I think that's where it's just, they don't, like when you see a student's highlight film, whatever they put you don't see the score. You just see them performing at their best. That's what they don't talk about the wins and losses unless it's, like a state championship or a national championship or something like that. That's about it. Other than that, you're just going to see their highlights, plain and simple. And that's what they want. Get in front of the camera.
So what about, as far as the organization, I'll give you a couple of examples. You've got, the parent living vicariously through their child. That's the baseball pitcher, and they're pitching, at school, and they're pitching with their club team. And then they're doing travel ball, and they're doing strength and conditioning classes. And at 15, they blow their shoulder out. Or you've got, the high school, the coach, and they've got a linebacker, and they're discouraging them from losing weight. They're like, we don't want you to be lighter. Come on, we need you to be a brick wall. That's the kind of thing. Like this organizational element of wanting the children to train and train and win and win and win. And then once they do get hurt, there's an element of being discarded because there's another kid waiting to fill that spot anyway.
Yeah, I think as an athletic trainer, I personally consider it my duty to have them see beyond the leaf on the branch in the forest. They're seeing this right now. I want to see them 20 years from now, walking down the aisle, playing with their kids, not losing a piece of their memory just for this game that they're not going to remember the score of, even if they had a healthy brain. I don't want to have them this permanent glitch in their step, like permanent limp or, bad arthritis in their shoulder because they had to keep going. Sometimes you got to save the athlete from themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think what I see is, a lot of the countries have incredible athletes, world champion athletes, and they don't train their kids the way that we do. And usually, again, when you want adults to continue being active, if you burn them out on a sport, you're going to create a dislike of activity, of sport, of training, etc. But if you can be, and I hear this a lot, the multi-sport athletes seem to be pretty resilient physically and mentally. But this single, specialty thing that we kind of put on a pedestal at the moment seems detrimental not only for their, as you alluded to, their brain health, their musculoskeletal health, but also the mental health side of burning someone out to the point they don't even want to see a pitch anymore.
Exactly. I had one of our former students here. She became to be a multi-time Olympian on the women's ice hockey team. And she always said the best thing I did was to make me a better athlete was to put the skates down for a while. Just totally walk away from it and go do something else. I go, I should make a poster of that with her face saying with her Olympic medals underneath it and how many Olympics she's been to, and absolutely. Put that right there. Look, it's okay. Do something else. Even if it's nothing, like go put on flip-flops and hang out at the beach. Just go read a book, take a walk. It's good. It's okay. Mentally, it's going to be better for you.
Yeah, 100%. I've been watching a show called Welcome to Wrexham. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, every episode.
So you'll know the one. I don't want to go too deep into it and explain why this, the context of this particular episode, but it was the one I just finished. So I just finished the series. But it's a very important game that they're about to play. And one of the two American actors who bought the team is going to give them a pep talk. And they're basically getting them to visualize back when they were little. And it wasn't even competitive little. It was when you were small and you played the sport just because you loved playing the sport. And I thought that was such a beautiful analogy compared to what we're talking about now. You might be in high school or college or a professional athlete, but if you lose sight of that simple love of playing, then there's a disconnect. But if you can tap back into the why do you even play sport? And like you said, that then, goes to, well, I love skating, but I'm kind of getting burnt out. So I'm going to go play football for a while, or, basketball or tennis or pickleball or whatever it is, or just walk my dog. But, that's it. Revisiting that love of movement, that love of sport as a child. I think that if you could put that in everyone's head and getting them away from weight loss and, what's your perfect physique, and just get back into, do you remember when you just liked playing because you were a child? That was it. If we could refine that in our 40s, 50s, 60s, I mean, we'd have such a healthy population.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like the terms I hear more and more, like for kids who are Division I athletes or who were Division I athletes and they come back, they always say it's a business. Like, I'm just around those people. Like, they're not putting down their teammates, but you can hear the urgency in their voice. Like, I just want to go do something else or hang out with someone totally different. But there's just such a time demand. I'm just picking that one avenue, Division I athletes, but that's the constant story I'm hearing more and more now.
What about the pressure that scholarships put on our children? And we'll stay with athletic scholarship. My son, was becoming a very good track runner. He had a sub 5-minute mile, which is obviously not, going to secure the highest of scholarships, but his learning, his improvement curve was pretty steep. And he got a kind of overuse injury and really did kind of get mentally burned out as well. And stepped away. And now he's a volleyball player, exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. But what I realized is a lot of the pressure he put on himself, there was none from us. We were like, look, we can do, grants and loans and all the things, community college, you don't have to get a scholarship, air quotes, to go to school. But I saw them put so much pressure on a scholarship. And again, that then is a disconnect. It's an external reason versus a love of the sport. So he went in loving running, and by the time he left, he'd lost that. So how much pressure are scholarships putting on our children that are in sports at the moment?
I think it's quite a bit, especially because not only doing their high school team, they're doing their travel team, and that's usually more times than not is when the college coaches or whoever else, that's when they're seeing that person is in bigger tournaments or whatever, and they're coming back to school with that pressure, like, hey, I'm in heavy contact with so-and-so, and they're keeping that on. And, oh yeah, they're trying to be a kid and do their grades and then get into college on top of all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing. If you get it, if you are that talented athlete and you put the work in, that's fantastic. But I forget what they said, but it was something minute, like early single digit percentages of all these youth athletes that are actually going to secure a scholarship, a full scholarship to a D1 school. So I'm not saying don't do it, but there are so many other avenues that you can enjoy playing sports. You can compete for your school, but you don't have this gnawing pressure that if I don't become this elite athlete, then the rest of my future is ruined.
Exactly. Yeah. Just learn to, like you said, find another avenue. It may seem like a failure at this point and you let everyone down, but it's just going to help you point in a different, better direction if it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to the fire side, but just staying on the AT area for a little bit longer.
Sure.
For people listening first, talk to me about the scope of practice of an athletic trainer.
Sure. So obviously it's a little different from state to state, but being nationally certified, we evaluate, treat, rehab the injured athlete. We'll deal anything from cuts, scrapes, bruises, sprains and strains, and then all the way through concussion care, from on the field to help with post return to learn, return to play, and then through post-surgical as well. I mean, we also have some first responder skills as well, from collar boarding, CPR, just to name a few, to be ready. It's kind of like if you took a PT and an EMT and smashed them together. We're fortunate to have that hybrid set of skills to be ready to take care of the injured athlete in multiple situations.
We know there's, some that are kind of idiosyncratic when it comes to young athletes, like sudden cardiac arrest. What are some of the most extreme things that you've had to, interact or deal with in your career so far?
Fortunately, I've never lost an athlete as passed. One of my dear friends had to, and that was tough when he called me on that one. But I mean, I've seen definitely my share of broken bones, dislocated bones, very violent collisions, concussions. And what I mean by violent, I mean like just as soon as they hit the wall, the person, they were out. And that was pretty scary too. I had one I still remember is we were at an away football game and the quarterback was rolling towards our sideline. So he was maybe 5 yards away from our sideline, and he simultaneously got hit high-low.
Oof.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could, like, the quarterback disappeared for a second because our guys hit him. And it wasn't anything like mean, like no one had like held him up and the other one came across. It was like that. And they rolled off of him and his leg was open tip fib. Just the sock was holding it there, right? And as soon as our low guy rolled off, I ran on the field before the whistle blew. And I grabbed the quarterbacks. Like, the quarterback didn't even know what was going on. Like, it even took the athletic trainer on the other side a minute, like, to, because they were clearing out of the way. And I was like doing this to him, like trying to give him the X for a fracture, and then to call the ambulance. And then I just basically bear hugged his arms, using my arms to bear hug him and then to hold his leg and just talk to him until, we got everything in place and got things going. Like, people didn't even know what happened right afterwards. So, I mean, that's one I always remember right away. I mean, it was just a sock that was just, keeping it from showing everyone what was going on.
What about the conversation as far as concussions and TBIs that you've seen throughout your career, the kind of evolution of that?
I'm gonna go way back and use a Florida Gator for this, the immortal Tim Tebow. Okay, people who remember when he got knocked out on national TV, that was one of the best tools to use as an athletic trainer. Only because, I mean, he was taken care of right. They didn't try to do the smelling salts and slap him back in the game. I think that was the start of better conversations of head care. And obviously Chris Nowinski has been huge in that, in head games. And going from there, I think there's definitely a giant evolution of taking care of the athlete's brain beyond the game. And it's made conversations easier and easier with parents. So I think that's been great. I mean, we do baseline testing here. My coworker, Meredith, who's also another athletic trainer, she's our concussion care coordinator here. And she helps coordinate. We have a doctor on campus, helps coordinate the care academically in the dorms, return to play. So I can at least say our students are taken care of from the moment it happens till they're fully released back to fully return to play. So I think that Tebow hit lit the spark, and it's been getting better there since. Like, having conversations with parents are just like, okay, sometimes we have to explain our return to play protocol. They don't get it. They just think, oh, they're feeling good in school, now they can go. They go, no, we got to do a few steps. This is the reason why. I think once we explain the reason why, so we don't have setbacks, and making sure, and then we can release them. Pushback has gotten less and less and less, which is phenomenal.
That's great to hear. I've got a friend, Toby, who is an athletic trainer. He's worked with UF, actually. He's in Gainesville. And one of the things that he was extremely passionate about, and I think we did the interview a couple of years ago now, but it was hyperthermia. So, overheating athletes, and again, we're talking old school, the 2-a-days in the middle of the sun, but how important it was to have a version of like a cold plunge hand for that kind of athlete. Talk to me about that.
Sure. So I can say here in New England, I mean, obviously we don't have to worry about the temperatures like we do in Florida. We now have a weather station on campus that does wet bulb measurements for us. But I also go out to the turf too, because that's a whole different monster as well when it gets hot. And we've had canceled games early in September because we just can't keep up with it. Or if it becomes later in the springtime, we have water breaks. We just talk to the ref. They go, hey, every 10 minutes, we're going to hit the horn. And they're just like, good. They're fine with it. Coaches are fine with it. We bring out we have some tents that we break out. And, if it becomes like that, for turf, we have soccer field, hockey, lacrosse on there. So depending on the game, we'll just adjust it. And, the teams are great, as long as everyone's on the same page. But overall, and then I do have a 300-gallon like big trough pool that we fill when we do have, when we're not using it the kids are not using it for ice bath. We'll have it filled up for hot days and the ice ready to go right there if necessary.
What about the other end of the scale, which we don't really have to worry about here in Florida? What about hypothermia?
Oh, when I'm looking out at the 1.5 that's outside our campus.
Exactly, which is far onto us here.
So we have a ski team, obviously. Our AD coordinates with the mountain, because it's their call, because obviously their weather's a little different. And, they won't have practices or we won't send. We also have kids that just do recreational skiing. We'll cancel the bus. As far as kids getting around campus, the best we can do is tell them to layer up, because they still have to get around to classes. But if it gets bad enough, we will put a shelter in place alert out, like saying, hey, after dinner, that's it. You're going to have to stay in your dorms or so forth. And, just deal with it as we come. Like this past snowstorm we had obviously came through Sunday, but we had to have like my second snow day ever in 25 years here at Berkshire. It was more giving our maintenance department time to catch up, clear the walkways, clear the roads, just so it's safe enough for everyone. Because it's still snowing through a good part of Monday as well.
One more area before we go to the fire side. You mentioned campus security. Yes. What is the philosophy in your school? There's so many different conversations about, especially when you're talking about the worst case scenario, the shootings that we've seen on so many of our educational facilities. You have the law enforcement embedded, you have armed, teachers. There's all kinds of different conversations. Which one do you guys lean into in your school?
Sure. So we had a swatting incident a little while back, unfortunately, and we had to go in a lockdown. But we are part of the run, hide, fight method. So we just locked down. Our local police enforcement with a few other local towns came in, and went through building. Obviously, it was false. It didn't come on campus. It was way off campus. And so I guess the FBI are involved in that method. But yeah, that was quite scary. And being part of, our critical incident team during that moment was intense and, quite stressful for a lot of students and adults. Just so I do have to dip into the fire department on this part. We did recently get ballistic gear as that and helmets if ever needed. We have, a ton of stop the bleed stuff ready to go with active shooter kits. And so do the police if ever needed. I've also done tactical casualty care course as well. So I learned how to, go right behind the police as well if needed, if I ever had to be part of a rescue team to do that. And I've been through a few drills as that as well. So yeah, right now, just run, hide, fight is what we do. There's no armed police on campus. We have campus safety drives around, and they have their duties as well. But we leave the guns to the trained police officers.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's move to the fire service.
Sure.
When did you even think about becoming a volunteer?
Sure. So when I first happened here at Berkshire School, early in my career, my head of school was big into community service. And he always thought that this place should not just be a bubble, be part of the community. So that's what kind of sparked my interest. And I got a flyer in the mail about the local EMT course. So just so you know, our EMS is separate from our fire. Our EMS is a private company around here. And so I decided to take that leap and do my 4 months of coursework and became an EMT. And then I started doing night shifts, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on every Monday night for about 12 years. And about 3 or 4 years into my EMT, I decided I wanted to push myself farther and joined our Sheffield Fire Department. And yeah, it's been great since. I've worked myself up from firefighter to lieutenant and now captain.
So talk to me about the dynamic of the department, and who do you have around as far as career?
Oh, sure. So ours is 100% volunteer. Only a chief gets a town stipend. So there's about 25, 30 members, and we all have pagers on our hips, and we have the I Am Responding app on as well that's hooked to dispatch. So, and we practice once a week, Wednesday nights. And, each Wednesday night is some kind of drill or skill. And then we set aside one Wednesday night. We all have dinner together, and we have our monthly meeting. So I think that's also a great part of setting good culture as well. I'm going to repeat that word a lot when we talk about the fire side. So, but yeah, that's the basis of it. We have 2 engines, a squad, a tanker, brush truck, ATVs, because we're right near the Appalachian Trail and plenty of brush fires that go on. We also have, we call Car 31, which is our SUV that we use for medical calls as well. That's set up with all great medical stuff in there as well. And almost a mini ambulance without the meds. So,
what is the population that you serve? Are you rural, or are you kind of suburban?
Yeah, we're rural. It's only about 3,000 or so, but it's like almost 40 square miles. It's a lot of farming land.
Okay, so you're a good example where volunteer fire service is more justified, because you see a lot of the Northeast, like New Jersey, literally a densely populated suburban neighborhood, and they have volunteer fire service, which I think, those are the ones that maybe we need to help go into the career mode now, because they're running crazy amounts of calls.
Yeah, and the 2 towns right next to us, one, they definitely have full time. They have like 2 or 3 on, during the day, but they're still volunteer. And then the other town next to us just switched over. They have 1 or 2 on during the day and their chief, and then volunteer response at night as well.
So, as you first go in, talk to me about the front door. You've got this EMT background now. What was the training like, and then what's the frequency of calls that you had in your career at that point?
So just EMS, yeah. So the training, it was twice a week and then one Saturday a month. So classes were about 4 hours a piece. Saturday was longer. Test every day on every chapter, getting us ready for at that point, it wasn't national. It was just the state of Mass before everyone switched over to national registry. So just getting us ready, honing our skills, making sure we got our steps down. And then after that, our first few years, we didn't have ALS. We were just a BLS place. And then slowly we worked ALS. They hired paramedics from another company to cover shifts. And then we just had paramedics full time with us after that. and just learning from them. Unfortunately, a few of our paramedics knew what an athletic trainer was. And so I was able to do a few talks on concussions, musculoskeletal injuries, splinting. So I appreciate that they leaned into my other set of skills when I was there. And then even when I went on calls, yeah, it was an ALS, but they kind of let me take the lead a little bit. Obviously sometimes they needed the medicines to relax the person, shall we say, or make them go to sleep because they're in so much pain. But just leaning into my ortho skills, I really appreciate that from a few of the paramedics that I rode with.
So on the EMS side, what would some of the calls that you consider career calls?
Oh, okay. What? Okay, I had two pop in my head. One, so when you walk in our ambulance garage, there's a hallway, and then there's the stairs to go upstairs. And I just put my bag right there. It was a little before 6 p.m. I put it down, and our first call was a structure fire. So I literally just turned around the corner, logged in, turned around the corner, went with our paramedic, and it was just 2 minutes down the road. And it was a long kind of rectangular apartment, 1-floor apartments. And the thing that saved that apartment complex was it was Monday night, and that was that city the town that we're in. It was their training night. So literally they had every firefighter in the firehouse when that went off, when they were practicing. So that's what helped contain it. They pulled the two people out. The woman, she was weighed about this much. So the firefighters took off with her. Our other ambulance crew was there, so they worked on her. We got the guy. He was kind of heavy set. His skin, unfortunately, was fluffing off in my hands. And we had to move him quite a bit out of the way. And so that started the night. And then we didn't sleep the whole 12-hour shift, us or the other crew, with other 911 calls. And then we had to transport the wife later, who had severe burns and stuff. And what was the other part that really stuck to me, that one? Oh, so we were just getting beaten left and right. The EMS guys were just hammering the button. Even if we looked at the chair, it was either the pager going off or the hospital calling us for a transport. It was just one of those nights. And then, so we got up, we did a transfer north in our county, which is about 40-minute ride or so. And that one wasn't like a code one. We could go at normal speed, luckily. And it was like 5:30, and they called the paramedic and go, "Hey, we need to send this person to Hartford." And he's like, "No." Like, the shift is over at 6, right? And he's like, "No." He goes, "You've seen us all night. Like, either me and Mark or the other crew, like almost every couple of hours. Like, and they have a pager in there, right where the nurses sit, so they can hear the calls going on top of it if they don't call us for a transport." And of course, he got in trouble for that because he was looking out for me and the other two guys. Because I think that would have ended very badly for whoever was in the ambulance and that patient.
Yeah.
With that was another one. I think almost any PEDS call, it just, they don't sit well. Because as you know, PED, they do great, and then it's a straight drop. So depending if you get there early, if you can catch them before they hit the downhill. But yeah, I think I'll just say PEDS calls. I won't get into a couple of them, but I'll say that.
Yeah, I think anyone that's done the job for more than a few months will be able to relate to that.
Definitely.
So, we're going to get to the piece that you wrote for eDali. Talk to me first about your observation now as we sit here in 2026 of your own mental health journey.
Okay. Yeah. I've definitely been through some calls. Not everyone goes through it different. I've I've definitely sought therapy and still seeking therapy for my own health to keep myself healthy. Um, I think one thing I can say I'm really good at, like if a person passes, dies, I don't beat myself up about that. I've always thought, I go, I did as much as I could for whether we're EMT, firefighter, either side. I think that's the one thing I never let that eat at me. I did my skills as best as I could. But, I think just seeing the trauma around it, or, the family on top of you, basically. I know you had those calls too, where they're, a foot from you, just screaming and yelling and just being emotional, being family that loves that person and you're trying to take care of. That stuff that definitely sticks with you for sure. But yeah, I think I've been better about taking care of myself, exercising, talking to someone, meditating, and I definitely more positive talk for sure.
Did you have a deep low, or have you always kind of been able to get ahead of it and be proactive with those therapies?
No, it definitely it built up after a while for sure. And then, self-realization, and I'm not gonna lie, my wife's poking and prodding too, which I'm very thankful for, to needing to talk to someone, I think was a huge turning point.
So through your wife's observation or your own, what were the warning signs, and what was kind of the lowest point that you found yourself?
I think just being depressed, kind of no feelings, quick anger, quick fuse, I think was a big one. Real negativity towards myself and just other things were the big ones.
So the piece that you wrote is obviously reflecting on, some of the challenges we have in our profession, and, how do we improve those?
Yes.
What about your reflection on the profession in general, whether it was your own volunteer department or it was more of a macro level?
Looking at mental health, you mean?
Yeah. What made you even get to the point where you wanted to write about it?
Sure. So the backstory to that is, I recently earned my doctorate degree in athletic training. And so when that essay contest came across, I was in my third year grad school. So my muscle memory for doing research papers presentation was very sharp at that point. And I was in a psychology class at that point. So getting facts, figures, that was the easy part. Like I could do that all day. But putting my personal twist on it and putting my stories in, as you saw, and then trying to make it more practical was the harder part. Like one part of it says, suggesting, obviously these are just ideas, having the officers do a psychological safety class. And obviously I could hear moans and groans from battalion chiefs and captains, guys who do this every day for a living, like, oh, another class, another checkbox. I go, yeah, I know it, but it just, we got to start somewhere. These are just ideas. But, that's the longest part was the practicality, and then the personal stories as well that I intertwined into that.
So, it's been interesting watching the conversation, because I would argue in my world, it was about 10 years ago where we really, really started, having this conversation. And again, it was in an echo chamber, and it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But back then it was, well, it's what we see. That's why we struggle, and now it's got a lot more nuances. We learned more from, neuroscientists and psychologists and psychiatrists and, so many other lived experiences that we've heard now. What are some of the glaring elements that, that you feel we need to be talking about here in 2026?
I think looking at the stats, even though we're talking more about it, the statistics aren't going down for first responders taking their lives. That's the most glaring thing to me. We're talking about it more, but all right, we're missing the mark, obviously. I'm saying it's not going to go down to zero. That's never going to happen, but at least show a downward trend to show some positive, that we're gaining good traction in this. I think that's the biggest glare that I see.
Well, this is what I've talked about with the mental health and also even with the cancer. Like the last place I worked at barely ever got a structure fire. They were a fire department as well, fire and EMS, but it was where they worked was so well sprinkled, which is basically Disney, that they never got fire. And yet they were dying left, right, and center. From cancer included. So if it was just the carcinogens in a structure fire, then departments that didn't have any structure fires should be super healthy. But that wasn't the case at all. What I saw in my observation, aside from us recently discovering the carcinogens in our gear itself, as per the manufacturer, like PFAS, is the one common denominator is shift work, is sleep deprivation, which we know is a carcinogen. And we also know has a direct correlation to all things mental ill health, addiction, suicide, etc. So, to me, that's what I call the herd of elephants in the room. So, there are other compounding factors. You mentioned, culture being a big thing. What are some of the areas you think that we need to pull out of the shadows?
Yeah, I think the sleep debt is a big one. And then fortunately, like we talked about earlier, doing the 24/72 is a huge step in the right direction. I think another part is this identity fusion. Like you're just not that first responder. That's not your only thing. I know, and people are having difficulty pulling away from that, whether, the calls or the lack of sleep or the culture, multiple things is, they take that home with them. But when you get home, there's a partner waiting for you. There's kids. There's another life, and people have, big problems pulling away with that, pulling away from their job and, taking home with them is another big part. And then when you go into work, I'm just going to use the professional side, is having a psychologically safe area to operate in. I think this shouldn't be treated as a epidemic. It should just be part of our operational readiness to be a psychologically safe area to come into work. All right. Now, obviously, we're going to have arguments and disagree and stuff. Like that's part of it. Everyone, not going to be holding hands and, being la, la, la all the time. I get that. We're humans, but, you got to come into an area and not immediately feel your heart, jacking out of your chest and thinking of excuses. Where can I hide so I, don't have to see so-and-so or do certain things? You should be able to come into work and, feeling part of the team and wanting to, do your role, whatever it may be.
What are you seeing as far as the contributing factors to a lot of this kind of organizational betrayal, toxic culture that, is reported quite frequently in the fire service?
Yeah, I think it's kind of top and bottom, which I'll explain. So the top is, our leaders at the top, we're brave enough to go into a fire to, pull someone out of a car upside down or, go down a building and into a window to grab someone. But to stand on flat ground and to, have that person, underneath you, not doing well, to be able to talk to you, you got to be that brave officer right then and there too, to help your team. And I think in the academy, that should be part of their learning. Like it's okay to speak up, to go to your lieutenant, your captain, senior firefighter and say, hey, I'm not expecting officers or senior firefighters to be psychologists, just a lending ear, just to listen. A little empathy goes a long way. Just to have, a place, I can go into work and I don't have to jam it down and pack it away. Now, obviously there are times where we have to, emergency situations, so forth, but you don't want that when you go out there to be a risk for the other people on your team, because you got so much going on, you're distracted from what you need to do at that moment to help protect your team or do your job.
You mentioned bottom up as well.
Yes. Just, when you button it up and pack it in, that's a tremendous risk to yourself and to your teammates. You got to have a space. Maybe it's outside, the police department, fire department, EMS, that you talk to someone. Great. As long as you're talking to someone and you're not just keeping it in and you're making bad choices and bad habits on top of that. And it's just snowballing from there. That's why I'm just come with the culture, having a culture where your leadership steps in. And I think the first 360 should be done in the firehouse when you step in as an officer, like each day. You don't have to have a sit down with each one, just sitting at the coffee table, getting the vibe for the day. Just a 2-minute thing. Hey, how you kids doing? How's the house coming with the other person and so forth. Just getting that connection with your team, I think, will go a long way in the future.
Now, I mentioned as far as contributing to the culture, you said the top down, but also the bottom up. So talk to me about the bottom up part.
Sure. Just my personal belief, I think that should be part of the academy. Like when they're teaching the future, like it's okay to speak up. Not disrespectful, like this is the way we learned in an academy, but like you're learning a lot, you're learning this life-saving job and you're trying to be, just a person at the same time, and they're going to clash and other stuff from outside is going to come smashing in as well. And being okay to, pull an officer aside or a senior firefighter and just asking for a little help or tips or whatever, just to help manage everything. I think in the future is like, just building part of that psychological safe place to work in.
It's interesting, all the conversations I've had with the 2472. And again, people hear me talking about that and I'm flogging a dead horse, but it's because it does address so many of the issues. And it's not the magic pill, but it's a huge, huge part of the puzzle. Identity fusion that you said, one of the most nauseating things I've heard from chiefs, and it's less now, but early on, I've been talking about this for 9+ years now, was, well, if we give them more time off, they'll just work more. Which, what an arrogant statement to say that you're in charge of people on their days off as well, but it's nuanced, because if you give people more time off and therefore you attract a much higher recruitment and retention, so therefore there aren't these vacancies that you're forcing people to stay to work. Now the extra work isn't overtime anymore at your department. So now it becomes, okay, once in a while you get an OT shift, but the rest of the time I'm going to have to figure out somewhere else if I want to bolster my income even more. So now for you, for example, say that you were a full-time firefighter and you decide to do that predominantly, but do, athletic training on the side. You do your 24-hour shift, and then you spend, 2 or 3 days at a school, and, you get there 7 or 8 in the morning and you go home at 5 or 6. And obviously, depending on games, but you're still with your family each night. You still spend quality time. You still get a good night's sleep, and you've got a different identity and a different tribe. So not only have you addressed the sleep deprivation and organizational betrayal element, because you're not telling someone, tell your child you can't go home today, pretty detrimental, but now you're forging that second identity. So God forbid you can't be a firefighter anymore for whatever reason. Now you've got this other tribe you can lean into, this other income that you can rely on. So I feel like it solves so many different things simultaneously.
Yeah, I think that also ties in back to our one sport athlete. Just being a firefighter,
yep,
it's not healthy. I'm just using firefighter, obviously any first responder, whatever your job may be, just doing that is not healthy. You got to build diversity into your life. You got to find somewhere else, some other healthy options to help you overall.
100%. And then even at the bottom, I'm going to be a little, harsh now, but firefighting isn't for everyone. EMS, law enforcement, corrections, dispatch, that they're not for everyone. And each one has their specialty skills that they need. And what has happened, I'm going to say what worries me, what has happened because we're witnessing it, is as this recruitment crisis has grown, bars have been lowered in places that don't understand really how to, fix demand. And therefore, people have become firefighters that really don't have the skill set to become firefighters. So now that we're inviting even more of a toxic culture to come in. Perfect example, we just had 4 of our firefighters arrested here in the county that I live in, which resulted in 10 terminations, which in turn was, not handled properly. So now, as a taxpayer, I'm going to be paying for all the lawsuits that come out of that too. Well, we still have an awful delivery of service, but that's another entire conversation. But the point being that if we're trying to fix the culture and therefore improve mental health, and yet we're lowering the bar and inviting people that aren't the right fit for this, and then God forbid they start promoting, you've got this horrendous vicious circle then. Conversely, like Pasco County just did on yesterday, you go to this healthier work week, their recruitment's through the roof, their retention is I would say through the roof, but they're retaining people that were posturing to leave prior. And now they're investing in access to mental health, and they're talking about putting in a punitive fitness standard. I mean, all these amplifying elements that are raising their bar and then also elevating the physical and mental health of their men and women. So taking from your world, what I love is reframing what we've really looked at as far as the negative sides of, what's basically killing us, and reframing it to performance. Well, how do we get the highest performing firefighter? Well, we've got to work on their physical health. We've got to work on their mental health. We've got to do operational training. We've got to think about breath work and mindfulness and some of these other things. And so now it's having the same exact effect on obesity and testosterone depletion and, mental health and addiction and relationships with their families. But on the other side, you're not putting it in a doom and gloom, sad envelope. You're putting in, well, no, we're forging performance. So just in your world, with your athletic trainer is trying to get your kids to win, but also have longevity, that's the lens I think we need to shift to in the fire service now. It's not, because it has been, the conversation is, well, why do we keep dying? What an awful conversation. Why don't we focus on performance, which in turn, the why do we keep dying elements will be fixed in that journey.
I think that's great with recruitment. I go, you're not just looking at the backdraft poster, we're way more than that. If through, like, when you're doing the recruitment, like showing them we're focused on taking care of you. You're going to go out there and take care of that 911 call because you're going to be well trained and you're going to have a team around you. That's not going to be a problem. But the stuff that you see and the physical trauma that happens to you, we're going to show you that things to help you, and we'll have a system around you to take care of you. I think that's the biggest selling point.
Yeah. Well, even going back to Wrexham, I mean, as we saw when they were a very small club, they had far fewer resources. But as they started developing them, they were like, okay, we need, a full-time athletic trainer. We need, sports psychologists. And you see all these people that are helping them not only stay healthy and hopefully reduce injuries, but also perform at the higher level. And taking that sport model that, a lot of the special operations community already have used for a long time, and applying it to police and fire and EMS and, not so much the physical, but the mental side to dispatch. That's, I think, how we need to move forward, because what we ask those communities to do, 99% of the country cannot or will not do. And yet that's really some of the most neglected professions. So I think it's an exciting journey from where we are now to really forging health and performance in all these professions that we, work alongside.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the athletic training, I'm just seeing more athletic trainers being hired by counties and towns to help their first responders, because there is a return on investment instantly. The work comp, what they have to pay goes down. They're quicker to turn around back to their shifts. And that also turns out you're educating the first responders for more preventative stuff. So when stuff, happens, they're learning more to how to take care of themselves in the long run. It's a win-win.
Absolutely. Well, before we go to some closing questions, are there any other elements that you wrote about that you want to make sure that we discuss?
I think, like I said, just overall, like, these are just ideas that came from my angle. I I've never been a professional firefighter. I haven't worked in a big city, Chicago, New York, LA. Obviously, the dynamics and budgets and politics are way different. But I think just getting these ideas out here, and they evolve and change into different things. But as long as they're being used, or an idea of it to help, our first responders, is just, the message I'm trying to get out there.
Absolutely. Well, the first of the closing questions then, is there a book or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
I'm going to say the books I've just read that helped me personally: Mel Robbins, the Let Them, High Five in Yourself, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Her books have really helped me turn a corner to, staying positive with myself. I mean, I have crappy days. I get down on myself, but not as nearly as before. I think she helped give me the right tools is what's helped me mentally and be a better athletic trainer, person, first responder as well. I think her books have really helped me a lot. I'm very thankful for those.
Brilliant. Yeah, my son's reading one. I can't remember which one it's called now, but he's got one of hers kind of on deck at the moment. What about film, television, or documentaries?
Oh, wow. I'm a super huge superhero geek. So I love all the Marvel and DC movies. Those are always, great to watch for fun. But man, I'd have to go Yellowstone, Paramount, Landman, big fan. Taylor Sheridan, period. All his are just out of the park. Wrexham is phenomenal. Love watching the boys. I follow them on my ESPN app to see how they're doing. So I know what's coming up when they film it. It can be a good match and highlights and lowlights as well. But yeah, I think those are the things I'm watching right now that are great to watch.
Speaking of amazing people, is there a person you'd recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
I mean, besides me?
We've already had you, so there we go.
Ooh, wow, that's a great question. I think actually Mel. I think showing her stuff and how it's backed by research. It's not just her like, hey, this happened to me one day and I'm going to write a book about it. She actually reading through her books, she's done her research, she's done her work. And I think just, going over some simple things and what she has in her books, I think would help first responders.
Absolutely. Brilliant. All right. Well, then the last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you. What do you do to decompress?
Oh, I fortunately have 2 black labs. So they are always happy to see me, no matter what kind of day I'm having. That always helps. But I'd have to say coming home to my wife. I would say my son, but he's studying abroad right now in Ireland. But yeah, just coming home and having a home, and especially after the tough days, getting a hug from my wife and my dogs around me. That's a huge decompression. But I am good. I do have to say, when I get up in the morning with my dogs, I don't look at my phone. I get right to exercising. So I think that's been a good change in me as well, is exercising, and then a little later on the morning to meditate as well, just to get myself centered and ready each day.
What kind of exercise do you prefer?
Right now I switched it up. I'm doing 100 reps with kettlebells, with a kettlebell, doing like halo swings, golf swings, upright rows, chest press. Just doing a lot of those, which I think has helped me on the fireground scene quite a bit. I've noticed, I can move around a little easier and less out of breath, and keeping up with the youngsters a little bit more. So.
Yeah, kettlebells are amazing. We shifted our programming from CrossFit to what's called Wolf Brigade about 2 years ago now. And so rather than the kind of American swing, the way over the head, now it's it's Russian swings, but it's also like super heavy. So we got a 150-pound kettlebell, for example, and game changing when you do it with with heavy movements. Obviously, the right kettlebell for the right movement, but I mean, a freaking steel ball or molded ball, whatever it's made of, how humbling that can be. Just soul crushing. Like you said, you just do 100 swings of a 53, for example. It'll put you in your place really fast.
Absolutely. And the good thing is I have my stuff at home, so there's no excuse, especially with this lovely New England weather where it's double digits right now. So it's a no excuse workout for sure. It's right there. Get it done.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for people listening then, where can they find the essay that we were talking about? And then where can they find you online?
Sure. So if you go to Darley, they have it as well. You can always contact me. I'll give you my email. It's M and then Wysocki, Wysocki at berkshireschool.org. You can find me in LinkedIn or Instagram. Instagram is mwysocki ATC. And then LinkedIn obviously is my name, and I'm always there, willing to answer questions, talk to people. I'm here to help.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much. It's been such an interesting conversation. Thank you to Kevin for making this happen. But, with your athletic trainer and your volunteer firefighter hat, it's really brought some unique perspectives to this conversation. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.